We're back.
Thought I'd let Roger start this morning since I normally say something right off the bat and it gets Roger chuckling and then the chuckle.
The Inglorious Pastords. Here we are. Ready or not. How did I do?
That was great. You did a super job.
I'm just trying to be original like you.
I'm going to bring that in just creative. A little closer there. Yeah. So
I'm Roger and
I'm Bruce Martin.
Bruce, yes.
We are former pastors, now retired.
Former brothers.
Wow, you are on a roll today. So did you divorce the family? Or did y'all vote me off the island after I left on Mother's Day?
No.
The family's been trying to do this for years. No. The secret vote. Should we keep Bruce in?
You won some points being there when...
With meat.
With very good
smoked
brisket.
Meat that the family, there was none left at the end.
What you didn't want to be at our family gathering this last Sunday was the one family member who wasn't there.
Yeah, that was sad, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's gone.
It's only the third time I've seen Dad cry. Yep.
Dave, we love you. We understand you couldn't be there. We know you love Mom. Glad you called in anyway.
I'm not sure I understand you couldn't be there. I get that you weren't there.
Well, we all made the effort to be there. And
the absence itself was a bit of a vacuum.
Whatever sacrifice.
Bit of a giveaway.
I told Mom, whatever it takes, I'm going to be there.
But here's what we have to say. David has to preach every Sunday morning and lives in Macon, Georgia, like 3 hours away.
Those are all excuses.
Okay.
Isn't that what grandmother used to say? Just all excuses.
How do you remember anything that grandmother said? Okay.
Maybe I just start making things up. I don't know.
You either have selective memory or you make things up because you love to be challenged by Dave. Because Dave would say something like this. Grandmother never said that in her life. And you can't argue it because David remembers everything.
I know what selective memory is, and I know I have that at points, but I also have what I would call sporadic memory, which sometimes some little memory floats to the surface and makes it.
So you didn't actually retrieve it. You know, most of us have a file box in there. We go to the file, we pull the file, we open the file. Oh, there's the thing. Rogers has floating files that every now and then just wafts in. And when Grandma said excuses.
When it comes, you just open it, you receive it because those gifts don't come along very often.
So, I mean, huge news on the NFL rumor front.
You are not going back to...
Did I talk about that last week? I'm so excited. Aaron Rodgers could possibly, however unlikely, become a Bronco. And then the Broncos are right back in playoff contention, Super Bowl discussions, and I'm watching them again instead of reading about them on Monday.
And you're seeing this whole Tom Brady goes from his lifelong team to a new team.
Wins the Super Bowl.
Takes 4 players with him and wins the Super Bowl.
So
you see
Aaron Rodgers leaves the
Green
Packers,
Bay,
brings all the really good
Packers.
People, and goes to a less cold space in Denver, where he's got offensive weapons all around him, including a brand new running back they drafted in the first round. And they could become this juggernaut.
Yeah, and he's really going to a setting where he would effectively be the coach because you guys sort of don't have one.
Do you think he could offset the coach? Because some quarterbacks have to offset the coach. For years, John Elway had to do that with Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves was dead set. We're going to lose this game. And John Elway in the fourth quarter was like, Coach, we're not going to lose this game. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to throw out a bunch.
Right.
No one had more fourth quarter comebacks than John Elway because of the coaching of Dan Reeves.
And you're saying that's because in those moments of the game, he just kept changing the call at the line of scrimmage.
He must have had to because Dan Reeves we ran the ball for 3 quarters and got behind 20 points. Every game. I mean, it's just every game. And so then we're going to throw it like crazy in the fourth quarter, win the game, and on to the playoffs so we can either lose to the Browns or get slaughtered in the Super Bowl. Those were the glory days.
Yes.
Those were great days. But then at the end, John Elway, the spinning, twirling helicopter in the end zone. Big win. Peyton Manning, what I call the lob years, and won the Super Bowl. Also very good. But, friends, we did not come here to talk about the NFL. We came here to talk about
I would say the internet.
Okay. You notice I'm
You didn't see that
hardwired
coming.
into the internet this time.
So I was thinking about the advantages, blessings, gifts that the internet and social media and email have brought to us, but also maybe bouncing around thinking about what are some of the liabilities, what are some of the risks, what are some of the dangers. Now, the obvious top advantage of the internet as we know it is that's making this video possible.
That's the top advantage of the internet.
Oh my goodness.
The Inglorious Pastords can go worldwide.
Well, this is what people, it's
friends, you heard it here first. The primary reason that the internet exists and is important is so that the Inglorious Pastords can share their message with the world.
So many beautiful, profound insights, so many.
We French people.
But I mean, the thought that you could do something like this, the fun part is hundreds of thousands of people are doing this.
Yeah.
So I think back to the day where you had
a few radio announcers.
Your radio.
Yep.
Let's say we're the era of radio, and that was like amazing. So you'd have, but people could tune in to shows, and maybe it's Amos and Andy, or there's a variety, but there's talk shows.
What was that talking horse show? Wasn't that when you said Amos and Andy? Just
Mr. Ed.
Mr. Ed. That was a TV show.
That was TV.
It was
great radio classic, Mr. Ed.
Same genre. No, and you had the rest of the story with Art Linkletter. No, what was his name?
Well, there is an Art Linkletter.
Is
yes.
there really? Paul Harvey. That was the one. Okay, got it.
Paul Harvey is the one who. Yes, the rest of
Lancelot
the story.
Link? What you gonna do now?
Oh,
I don't even remember what that was from.
I don't know.
That was a Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh, yes.
Lancelot Link, what you gonna do
Bruce
now?
just zoomed past radio right into the TV era.
Go back to the internet. All right.
But it's funny you bring that up because listen to someone this week. I hadn't thought about this, but making the point that almost everyone would see now that the internet has had far more impact than radio, far more impact than television, that the internet has not simply been another.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there was a change with radio. There was a change with television, but nothing as dramatic as what the internet has opened up.
It makes me think about like transportation, because when I look at the transportation industry, I still love seeing trains. Like in your neighborhood,
oh gosh,
a train comes through.
Yes.
I'm just fascinated by it. It always takes me to this bygone era, but they're still moving huge amounts of things by train. And then you have, of course, the mail service. You have UPS. You have FedEx. You have all these other things. But the internet to me would be like when someone figures out how to electronically beam something from here to there.
Right.
All of a sudden, the transportation industry changes radically.
Right.
I mean, that's what the internet did. Those other things still exist, but the internet now drives them in different ways.
Right. No, and listened to someone interestingly yesterday who was talking about email. He wrote a book and just listened to an interview he was doing. I don't know if it's the end of email or something, but he was commenting on when email radically changed the workplace.
Yeah.
And this is all related to technology, because now here we come into blessing or liability, whatever is, you've got the speed that it opens up, the opportunity that email this.
I thought you meant like how long it takes to open a letter. Because when you get a letter, it's still sticky. It's going to take a long time to get this thing open.
Well, he was talking about how, email made everything so much more convenient. So at some point you had, remember fax machines?
I remember fax machines. I remember sending a letter. This was back in the 80s, before I understood even what email was. We would send a letter inviting someone to speak at our conference.
Yes.
So you would send a letter, and that
You'd
letter,
open a paper letter.
That might get to them in 3 or 4 days. You don't actually know if they got it or not.
Right.
And then maybe 3 or 4 days later, or a week later, or a month later, you'd get a letter back. So exciting. And then you would open it up and you would say, well, yes, I can speak at your event. No, I can't speak at your event. You realize what that did for planning?
Right.
So email compressed it to, I can send it to you in a second.
Right.
You can look at your calendar and respond in a second. Yep, it's just fat. You're right. It's weird.
But, and I think this is part of what this guy was talking about as it relates to email. So you and I know even how much faster we like, just think of things faster, making things, and we think, okay, more efficient. And then we assume better or more productive, better. But the liability that he talked about, okay, now with email, so now you had this thing that allows this incredible amount of faster communication, but now you have people, you've also opened the door now for perpetual constant interruption. That email now is, so where before you'd go to an office, knock on a door, and he was talking even about this dynamic. Well, and you're more concerned. You okay, I'm not going to come all day, or I'm going to be, he's got his door closed. I'm not going to, or it's only going to be a very specific time I'm going to interrupt. But now with email, you're not interacting with anybody. You're just sending something off to them. You're just sending, it's easy, all this. Well, they're getting that. And of course, now we're carrying the internet in our pocket in a little device all the time, which has messaging, which has email, which has multiple communication devices, aside from also being a phone where people can contact you. So now this thing that made things faster, which allowed us to be more productive, ironically has this other piece where people are checking email all the time. And again, what this guy was talking about, he's in the fascinating thing of people not realizing you're working on a project, whatever. So with what we're learning more about the human mind, you're working on a project, whatever, you stop to check your email just for a moment. You stop to check your email for a moment. You get back on. All the resorting, all the things your mind has to do to get back, the productivity loss of instant communication. You can be so here's this.
Unless you're hyper disciplined. Because I was listening to a motivational speaker last week that said he only reads email between 10 and 12 in the morning.
Right.
He never opens his phone first thing in the morning. He said, I want to take control of my world first thing in the morning.
Smart.
What are the things I need to do? He likes to spend some time in scripture. He spends some time listening to motivational things. He works on his business, the things that are important to him. And he even tells his team members, don't ever send me a negative email except between 10 and 12. I'm not going to look at it. He doesn't want, what he learned is, okay, so if you open your thing, you get one email that's just negative or disappointing, or someone's upset about something. He said it can actually start framing your whole day.
Sure.
Your whole day gets framed by, oh gosh, this thing, I got to respond. I don't know exactly what to say about that. And instead he's like, nope, I'll handle that. He's always like, I'll handle that between 10 and 12.
Right. And
then he's already taken care of the stuff that's important to him.
Right.
This is my priority stuff. Now look at this. The other, to me, big downside of email is people's expectations around it.
Yes.
So again, I knew it was going to take weeks to get a letter back, and I wasn't frustrated by that because that's just how long it takes. Well, now, so business protocol is the professional courtesy is respond to email within 24 hours. Most people want a response quicker than
immediately.
That they expect it immediately. Like, I know you're not doing anything important at all in the world. You're probably just twiddling your thumbs. So I need this piece of information. And what it does is information that you would have gotten weeks in advance normally. Now you think, oh, I need that information in the next 20 minutes. I'll just email Roger and get that from him.
Right.
Unbeknownst to you, Roger's in a cave spelunking where there is no internet and you can't get that information.
I'm a big spelunker.
And then you're angry with Roger because he didn't respond to the email, immediately, when you should be upset with yourself because it was information that you could have gotten weeks before. Anyway, so I'm just learning a lot of stuff. Don't even respond to it for 24 hours.
Well,
or more.
Well, and we've talked so much. You've talked about how much you're wired. You're tuned into people's expectations.
Oh, heck yeah!
And but there's even the fascinating thing that's gotten built with that, because you have this instant communication, and now very often attached to that, I expect a prompt reply. That can even be, that can be a text message.
And what's prompt?
Right. In our mind, but it's this thing now that it's broken down boundaries, that what you're talking about, where we have to set these very, very firm boundaries that actually people, without even realizing it, have expectations about what we ought to do, that they're pressing in, that technology now allows them to do, where they so this I don't know if this guy or another guy just listened to this, talked to this recently, just a fascinating conversation, but also the thought around, which I never thought about, but I guess this is a conversation that people are having because the internet and email is free. Well, again, it's all too easy. There's one guy called no friction. So if it was going to cost me to send you a message, or if there's at least some kind of friction, now I'm going to pause. If there's going to be some kind of cost, whatever, but it's free. There's no
unless you're in prison.
Oh gosh.
No, I mean, don't even get me started on this. But
okay.
There's an inmate that I go back and forth with. We can text message, but it costs you significantly. It's such a racket. It's really frightening. But all that
aside from the racket side, there are those who are saying, in general, there could be wisdom to having a cost attached. It's
right.
It's just too simple.
Right.
And you realize now, people, I just do something because I can. And I'm not thinking, because I don't have the face-to-face interaction, I'm not even tuned into what they need. Am I interrupting? There's no kind of, there was this great story the guy told. He said, so they were doing this test with this organization. They said, we're going to take you off of email for a week.
Oh, gosh.
Off of email. So a side note to this, the guy was talking about there was one boss that he had that was just always interrupting always sending him stuff. So he'd be in the middle of stuff. He's just always getting stuff from this boss all the time, interrupting his work. And he was just having the frustration with that.
Yeah.
So then he has this week off, right? And there's nothing. He's not hearing it all week from that particular boss. The fascinating piece was that boss was 2 doors down from his office.
But wouldn't come down to interrupt him.
And the point this guy was making was just the little bit of friction, the little bit of work, when it's so easy. And again, this is where things that are so easy seem like they're going to make everything better, but they break down boundaries. They create disruptions. So you have to be tuned into, and maybe it's part of the conversation today, even just being aware. These are things I hadn't even really thought about in some ways. Being aware of, with all the good, what are the challenges? What are the downsides? And this guy talked about, again, even how much email changed work and how we do work. That it wasn't just added to the workplace, it changed the workplace. It changed.
Oh, yeah.
And in his mind, has tended to make us far less efficient or whatever, because of the constant interruptions. Unless you have what the guy you were listening to, and this is where he was pressing, and I guess many others are pressing now.
Hypervigilance.
You have to
be super
disciplined. Hyper boundaries. You have to be super where you're realizing, I'm going to have one point in the day, where I check email. Because I was thinking, even when it's not negative, you were talking about the negative thing, but when I get an email or something, it just puts something else in the queue.
Yeah.
Now I'm going back to the project I was going to work on, but now I have the weight of, I need to respond to that. If I hadn't checked it, I didn't know it's there. could be a good thing, something,
Right,
but
yeah.
it's now it's something that has to be responded to.
It's in the mental queue. That's an interesting
And
way
then
of putting
in
it.
my mind, I can even be doing something, but now I'm actually thinking also about that and how I respond to that. And it's the whole point. It's the brilliance and wisdom of I'm going to have one time
Yep.
to check emails, and then the next day but I'm going to, because then you can be more productive. Anyway.
Well, and it's interesting. So part of that, I want to retrain people even that interact with me. So I used to be, if I didn't answer an email like within a day, I was like, hey, sorry, it took a minute to get back to you.
Right.
And I would often even explain, here's this thing. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I just respond to that thing, whatever that is. Otherwise, it might take 3 days. Now, there was like last week, I literally lost the email. I had so many that came in. It just sort of got pushed down. And it was someone that I had promised to call back. Hey, I'll call you after 4:30 today. Well, 2 weeks later, I found that email. I'm like,
Ouch. Oops.
I definitely wrote an email. I am so sorry. Totally lost this email. And it is that thing where there's so much coming in. It's interesting. My email, this is just my world. My email, it represents a secondary task list. I have a task list that I'm working on. Like, I need to get these things done this week, but it's always a secondary one because all those things represent something I need to respond to. And this is where I realize I can get overwhelmed very easy because my brain can keep all those things in the queue. But the queue is getting overloaded.
Oh, yes. No,
the queue is just getting tired.
It's sapping energy, getting tired, right?
It's like,
the queue's getting tired.
Hello, address the queue. Address the queue.
Right.
And I'm like, and then I don't have the emotional energy to address the queue. Sometimes it's one email that I know is going to take a lot of energy to write because I need to respond in a certain way. It might be one of those more difficult emails. And I know if I just jump and knock that thing out right now, it's going to be snarky and it's going to be fast and it's going to be misunderstood. So I wait. But then I'm waiting. It's still up there, still bugging me. And I'm like, and by the way, I can't get my mind off the poor guy that went a week without anything from his boss. I guarantee the following Monday, he got 127 emails because his boss had him in the queue. Send on Monday. He was just,
or maybe not, because it wasn't simple, because it wasn't immediate, but because it wasn't right. Sometimes where you're just doing a thing to do a thing, because you've actually interpreted that is your work, that is your
right,
and you're not thinking about what's actually helpful to people, what's actually.
So the other thing, internet, because I thought this is where you're going. It's interesting. The internet,
there's gobs of places you can go.
Well, that's why they call it the internet. It's the World Wide Web. But that's great. There's gobs of places you can go. It's very good, Roger. But there is tremendous amount of information. But what I've watched in the last 5 years, it's interesting. There's also a tremendous amount of misinformation. So now it's this wonderful, terrible thing. You've got both of those out there all the time. And then it's not just the discernment. I mean, because sometimes I can read two opposing articles. I'm like, this one says this one says this. I'm like, well, which one's true?
Mm-hmm.
Both of them have these, people saying, credible people, hey, this is that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it creates all sorts of different tensions for us now. Which narrative is accurate or is true or is, and think about what it's done in the world of conspiracy theories. Holy cow, it's just so much easier. Back in the old days, Roger, you had to write a book. Then you had to get a publisher foolish enough to publish it and then try to get it out to people. It was just harder to start a conspiracy theory.
Now, but you're getting out. Now, here's the other thing. Making things simpler has some advantages. Making things simpler has some super big dangers to it. In days past, for better or worse, you had fewer news outlets. You had fewer information outlets. And you had to work. In other words, writing a book was very involved, and there was going to be cost, there was going to be time. Yep. So it was a big ordeal to get a word out. That was one of the few ways you could get a word out to lots of people. Mm-hmm. We might think about radio or television. Well, that was heavily vetted. There's a process you had to. So there were a handful of news organizations we're talking about where people were getting information from. Well, that was heavily vetted. And I'm not saying there were no biases at that point. And I'm not saying they were all objective and there were, but there were very, very few. And in general, there was some level of accountability. There's some level of accountability for, we're going to put a story out there.
You've always had the Inquirer.
Right. You've always had the.
You remember we used to sell the newspaper True Grit or something, the Grit or something. You remember on our little bikes, we moved as a newspaper.
The Grit.
The Grit. David will remember. David, call your brother, tell him about the Grit.
I think there was a movie, True Grit.
Well, yeah, I
which
think
was John Wayne.
I threw John Wayne in there somewhere, but it was like the Grit.
Somewhere we used to throw a newspaper out about John Wayne
No,
or
we didn't.
something.
It was the Grit.
You're looking it up on the internet.
If we have internet,
Let's see how we can. This is funny.
the
listen,
Grit newspaper.
You understand we're in the middle of a podcast, and you're actually
see there it is. The Grit magazine, the Grit newspaper.
Yeah,
there it is.
Okay, right.
$7 on eBay.
That's
You don't remember that?
Now you're mocking me.
Okay. Well, you had this memory earlier today.
That is.
I think floated in there about grandma said something.
So you have, but now everyone can get their voice out there. Again, what I had some fun with talking about the advantage of us being able to do a podcast like this and hundreds of thousands of people doing that. Well, hundreds of thousands of people are doing that. So now there's countless outlets for information.
Yep.
There's far more and well, not only does it allows anybody to say anything without any accountability, without any cost. Even the easy factor. I can just put this word out there. Again, where there's friction, where there's some cost. If I had to pay $15 for every post I put out there.
You think about social media opinions. Okay, we've created a world where everyone has an opinion about just about everything. It doesn't cost you anything to put it out there.
Right. We've always had the opinion.
Except for a little social capital. Well, and now I think we're coming up with opinions that we don't even need to have an opinion about. I mean, the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing I don't need to have an opinion about that.
Right.
I don't have enough information to have an opinion about that. There's no need for me to even offer an opinion about. But social media, there's just opinion everywhere, and then people repost this opinion, and it's just fascinating to me. But it's you're right. There's no cost to that.
Right.
What if Facebook charged you? Right. What if Facebook charged? How many people would stay on Facebook?
Right. Well, first of all, yes, as a platform, how many would stay on? And then, or if there was a charge per post, or per video, or per, or whatever, per like, whatever, because it's so easy, because there's no cost.
Yeah.
It lends itself to, I don't review. Even where something has a cost to me, I pause. Is this worth it? What's the bit? We do a cost kind of benefit without even realizing it.
Sure.
If there's a cost to something, am I going to pay that? Why? Is it worth it? Whatever. But in a world where there's, again, in one person's, there's no friction. There's nothing slowing me down at all. It's too easy. Then it lends itself also to a world, and it raises the question, does this also contribute, chicken or egg, maybe which comes first, to a culture where we think less critically about things?
That's more of a cart horse, I think.
Cart horse. which always seems sort of I think it's more chicken egg than cart horse.
Well, cart horse doesn't make sense. Of course the cart can't be in front of the horse. So why are we saying that's putting the cart in front of the horse? Everyone knows that doesn't work.
And the cart certainly doesn't come from the horse.
I've never seen a cart pulling a horse. Okay. So actually a cart could carry a horse. So there's that.
Yes.
Say that again. I'm a little distracted today, I can tell.
Well, that would be two of us now with your little excursion into the relationship between carts and horses.
Let's go back to, you just said chicken and egg. It kind of lost me.
Well, I'm talking about just a culture where has then ease of getting information out with no cost.
Yeah.
Which means no thinking required. Does that also contributed to a culture where we just think and review things less?
And the information isn't as good. I just wondered about that. We're lazy. We're late. There's no cost to this. What if
we
think
get
about this.
lazier.
What
Yes.
if all cars were free? This is all free. You think cars would get better or worse?
Well, it's the whole. It's even the question that's come up. If you just pay people for not working, or they're just not
Right.
working, whatever. Does that in some ways tend to make us less likely to want to work? Do we?
Well, it would seem societally right now, it's creating you have
whatever all the causes
even
are.
in Huntsville, you see signs up everywhere. Hiring.
Hiring. Yep.
Hey, we're going $12 an hour. We're going $15 an hour. And they're just we need people to work.
So too easy.
Yep.
Again, it's the beauty of I love easy. I really do. But too easy has a lot of dangers attached to that. And
yep, that's why I take people out in the wilderness for 2 to 10-day backpacking trips, Roger.
all right, I'm going to sleep while he makes a plug for his
Because
hiking trips.
I don't believe in making things easy. I believe in taking people up mountains.
It's not born to be mild. It's born to be wild.
And it's not born to be child either. Okay, so bring your adult self. We're about to go climb a mountain. No, but I'm thinking about all the strengths, weaknesses, both of them woven together, internet. And at the same time, I'm like, gosh, what would we do without it now?
Right. No, here's another one. So it's absolutely fascinating. Who would have thought? Again, we're in high school, we're in college. And of course, we understand you leave high school, leave college, there'll just be gods of people you're never going to hear from ever again in your life. You're not going to, you're not even going to write them a letter. There's just not going to be, you're not going to know where they live.
Roger, you're not going to remember.
Right. You're not going to remember.
You're not going to remember them. You're not going to remember you went to school with that person.
Or you go, you take a look in the annual or yearbook.
Because I've gone to
my goodness.
Yeah, I threw all my annuals away. So,
but now, Mom showed me one of Dad's annuals from when he was in high school the other day.
Really?
Totally fascinating. Some of the notes and people that wrote today. Anyway, that's a whole side.
That's very interesting.
That kind of stuff's fascinating to me as history goes. Now we're going to have digital yearbooks where.
Well, and I need someone from the class of 82 to send me their digital yearbook because I threw all my yearbooks away. So I can't, there's really I have no record of myself from those years. I'm just not a sentimental person. But I do exist. But it's interesting now that I'm in my 50s. I'm like, I kind of like if I can see all that stuff.
I am more sentimental.
In my 20s, I can care
less.
do
have those annuals, all but one, I think. And
do you really? Well, I'm in some of those.
Yeah.
I'll come look at your annuals.
Yeah. No, you've got some very cute pictures in them.
When I was 4'3", standing on phone books in the class
bushy
picture.
hairs and glasses that look like. Anyway, it was.
Yep. Everyone called me Elton back in the day.
So no one called you Elton. But we did like Elton.
We did like Elton. Elton was a good guy.
But so now, who would have thought? I mean, you can keep in touch with, and you're getting information. You're seeing pictures of, people you went to high school. What they had for breakfast that morning, or you have all this. So at one level, right? The cool thing is to catch up and hear some people's stories and actually some fascinating things. And they've got these kids and the things that they're doing, maybe it's kind of fun. But now then there's the press of relational overload. We can only handle so many relationships. So now that thing, now I'm learning. You think about how many things across, even when I'm on social media, and I'm basically on Facebook. I'm not one of those what's Insta Face and all the other grams and the other
Face, Insta Chat. I'm
signed on to Twitter. I never use it, so I'm there.
Slam.
All these Face Slam. That's good. That's going to go somewhere.
It is.
So you have all and new emerging ones. So I'm just on Facebook. Listen, on Facebook, what happened this week? I mean, in the last week or two, several people have had a family member die. So I'm, but then there's birthdays, there's celebrations, there's a job thing, there's someone having a new baby, there's having and there's this point where the beauty of having this connection now with all these people, but now there's the weight of that, or even the expectations. Like, because in a relationship or a friendship where there's a death or there's a milestone or what, well, you'd respond and you'd keep up. Well, you can't do that with, now you're making these choices, just like when you're almost back in high school. What, am I offending somebody, or am I not? I'm not responding to this, and I'm feeling like I should. I now know too much relationally.
Yeah. So like on Instagram now, this is interesting. If it'll come up in a notification.
I'm not even on Instagram.
Well, I'm not either, but I get Instagram. I mean, I'm on. I've got something out there.
That's like me with Twitter. Yes.
I use it once every 10 years, but it'll say, "Oh, this person does, so I want to see it," but it says, "You will view this story as Bruce W. Martin." In other words, the other person can see that I viewed their story. Well, now I'm kind of making decisions. Do I want that person to see that I viewed their story? Here's what makes it tough. I can't get into that thing with that notification. There might be something from Born to Be Wild that Ashley posted that I want to see, but do I want to see that? It's just hilarious that now these little mental decisions you have to make. Oh, I don't know that I want to do that. So imagine imagine if Facebook, Bruce viewed this about the loss of your loved one and did nothing.
Well, right.
No response, no reaction, no sad face, no comment, no anything.
Right.
As far as I know, they can't do that.
You hope.
I hope.
But deep in the recesses, they could be doing that.
But I do find myself, which ones do I respond to? Which ones do I not respond to? You know, I don't scroll Facebook very much anymore. I used to do it a lot.
Yep.
I use Facebook much more now just for business, Born to Be Wild stuff. And every now and then a post about happy birthday to my son or something like that.
But once again, there's this, it seems we're coming at this thing where then we have to continually be creating boundaries.
Yeah.
We have to be, but how many of us just, and how many points in my life have we just not been tuned? Well, I know even now, I'd like to, I've got boundaries, but I know there are places now where I don't have boundaries. I don't see it. I'm doing certain things reflexively. I'm doing certain things.
Yeah.
But we have to constantly be coming back to, I've got to limit this. I've got to limit this to a certain time. I've got to limit this to a, I can only do so much. I can only do so much time. There are certain times a day when I shouldn't read, or I shouldn't. And of course now too, on Facebook, you're not only contacting them, but then you're getting all their opinions and all their ideas on everything from the simplest things to what restaurant to go to who you should vote for, and et cetera, et cetera. What's right and wrong with the world. And you're carrying the weight of all this. I don't know if I brought it up on a previous, doesn't matter if I did, because we bounce around, talk about things, but it was fascinating to hear one person talk about in this day where you have all this information, all these different sources, and they're saying all different kinds of things, that we almost reflexively look for someone to sort through it for us because it is too much.
Yeah.
And so where we go to a trusted, whether that's Fox News, whether that's a particular podcaster, whether it's a particular pastor, where we just end up, the safest route is I need somebody to curate this. I need someone to sort through. And it's not even in some cases that I'm unwilling to discern or I don't want. It's that it's too much.
Right. Because
here's the other thing. All this stuff that's out there, don't we all feel like we're behind on everything? I can't keep up. I had this just to feel even getting today.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. That's interesting.
All the books,
the feeling of
all the movies, and now there are all these podcasts. So they're good. I mean, good, outstanding ones like this one. And, just, but I mean, there really is. We've talked about how many great musicians are out there, how many great speakers there are, how many great writers, how many great artists. Well, now we're exposed to them all the time. You realize now we get those all the time, but it means we constantly feel like I'm behind. I can't keep up. There's so even in the world of philosophy and thought, things, there's so many good thinkers out there. There's so many. So I'm listening in podcasts this last week.
That's the difference in your work and my work. I realize I'm envious of certain components of your work now. So when you're doing counseling in the middle of my week, I can't listen to podcasts.
No.
I can't research anything. I can't just listen to these wonderful speakers and teachers. Roger's over here taking pictures of items.
Can you imagine
shipping?
It happens a lot in our world. You're having conversations with someone and they just pull up, people, and they're just starting now while you're talking to them.
While you're talking to them.
No, right. Now it says, we realize how we're so multitasking, but I think like in a counseling session, like that's the death knell, right? You're talking to someone. Oh, I think that's true. It's a good thought.
Brother.
Oh, this is good. Check this out. I mean, can't.
How about we put our phone down, Mr. Counselor? Okay. All right. No, but that's, yeah. I've been lost in thought about Jesus and the internet.
Get us to Jesus. You're good with that.
I was reading him this morning and he said, too much is given, much more will be demanded. So consider carefully how you hear. Consider carefully what you've been given. So I even think about how much am I using the internet? I could be using the internet a whole lot more for good, because Jesus talks about being ready and servants that know their master's will but don't do it. And I want to be that servant that responds to and acts on what I know. And the tension for me is, all right, the internet's this wonderful tool. I could be using a whole heck of a lot more to help people to get the message out about the love of God. And I'm just reflecting on how I don't know that I'm doing a great job with that. Some of it is what I call the overwhelm component. I realize like my emotional bandwidth is lower than most. It just is. Mm-hmm. So where some people have an emotional bandwidth that's that wide and they can just roam throughout it. Mine is much more narrow. And if I take on too much, I go, I'm way under it. Now I can't. Because I can overwhelm very easily. So that's why I have to be disciplined about what things I say yes to. And I've been wrestling a lot more with that right now. What are the things this year? Because last year at this time, I was doing 28 videos for 28 days. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
And it was right at this time, right before we're going to Florida, taking people through the book. That was using the internet to get. And it's so funny. I just got someone last week that had watched one of these videos. They said, "Oh, thanks for sharing that. That was so good." I'm like, it was from a year ago. That's the other fascinating thing to me about I live shot something a year ago, but now people can still access it.
Yeah.
Which is just fascinating. So am I using that thing that God's given us? In other words, if the internet is a resource to be stewarded, am I stewarding that well? Obviously, we're stewarding it incredibly well with this particular podcast. I get that. But are there other areas? Because even last year, at this time, I was planning to start a podcast.
Yes, I remember.
Which technically I did. I just started one with you. But it wasn't the one that I thought I was going to be starting.
Well, I'm on the interested. You talk about the emotional bandwidth and how you can say yes to many things, or you're doing too many things and you're taking on it's more than you can handle. What can overwhelm me is too many options, and this is one of the challenges of the internet. Is there what you're talking about? There are so many things we could be doing, and
podcasts, live videos, blog posts, vlogs.
You can invent things now. Now it's like this putty in your hands. That's part of the fun. There's actually things that no one's even thought about doing that now the internet makes possible. You can dream in ways. You can things. So for me, I get option overload. So I tend to get paralyzed where you might be doing too many things. I'm not doing anything maybe at some points because there's so many options. But when it comes around to me, if I come back to Jesus, I need magnetic north. I need a center. I need a guide so that can help me sort through, like you do. You go out with people out in the wilderness and you're helping them navigate terrain they're not used to. Yep. It's too much for them. There would be people who have no idea. And this would be me at points. There would be certain situations I would not know what to do. There's possible all these things I could do, and I need a guide. And I think the reminder here in sorting through the good of the internet and the dangers, I got to have a guide. I really have. It's where I found, praying with joy in the mornings. Again, just God, we need guidance today. Just sort through. There's certain things that are just overwhelming. There's certain things, there's so many options. There's so much information. There's so much pain in the world. There's so many needs.
Yeah.
There's so many injustices. There's so many, God, where I need a guide. And this is the grace. Yes, we're in a season unlike any other civilization, any other culture, the kind of where we have in this time period. Now, each time period has had its own challenges, but every time period, every culture has needed a guide, and the guide is Jesus.
Yep.
The guide is the one who made us, who's allowed us to create all of this beautiful, amazing technology, but none of that. It can make things easier. It doesn't save any of us. It has opportunities for good.
Sure.
But we need a guide. We need that. We need the shepherd. We need the rock. We need.
So that's where I'm trying to live these days. Just remain in me. Let my words remain in you. Remain in my love. And he said, and you will bear much fruit. It's like I don't have to try to bear fruit. I have to make sure I'm just remain in him, remain in his love. Let his words remain in me. Jesus said, you will bear much fruit. And so that's kind of where I'm trying to just stay. That is that constant. And of course, Jesus said the Holy Spirit will guide you into all truth. So we've got this. We do have this guide. So
in Proverbs 3, in all your ways acknowledge him.
He will.
And he'll direct your paths. And I do live out of, that's
Yes.
what I have to keep coming
Yes.
back to is rest, acknowledge, trust, look to him.
So in closing, be disciplined about the internet. I mean, because it's infinite distractibility. Okay.
Right. It's great, but yes.
And 2, let God guide you on how to use it positively.
Right. Well, even a question, where do I need it? What are the boundaries? There are a lot of people that are writing some good things about that, but just whether it's reading some of those things, but then it's God, give me some sense. Where are the places? What are the kinds of boundaries? Where do I, because most of us, myself included, are being controlled by things and forces and in ways we don't realize. We're not tuned in. We're not
paying attention.
We're not paying attention. Right.
And let's all pray fervently for Aaron Rodgers to go to the Denver Broncos.
Yes, this is a grave concern.
A grave
of God.
Grave concern. I just trivialized the entire podcast. Terribly sorry. So until next week.
Let's do it again. Yeah.
But you want to refinish that?
No.
Okay.
No, I was just hoping you weren't going to say something to some bat channel.
Nope. No bats today. No needs for bats.